take it away. You're going to love this.
Okay, thanks so much. So if you don't know me, I'm Dana Sather Robinson. I am your friendly neighborhood pitch trainer. And I live locally. This is great. It's so fun to be here at a live event. I have a question for you all. Who here is a founder? Raise your hand. Okay, who is currently raising money? Raise your hand. And of those of you who are raising money, how many of you are really confident that you will raise money? Okay. All right. So I ask a lot of questions when I meet investors and founders, and I've kind of come to the realization that only a small percentage of founders actually succeed in fundraising. Some VCs have said that they fund about 1% of by the time you get through screening and due diligence and where they put their money, they might only fund 1% of the businesses that contact them. But the data's varied. I tried, all sorts of sources, anywhere from 1 to 20% of founders actually succeed. But so the vast majority don't. But of those, the vast majority really think that they should and that they can. So there's a huge gap there. So you are in the right place to bridge that gap between confident and really sure that you have something that deserves to be funded, but then actually succeeding. And we're here, Ron's here. Like, the reason that people come to these events who are not founders is because we want to move that needle between those that fail to succeed and those that really are confident and should be succeeding. So we want to help founders succeed. So you're in the right place. Learning, mentoring, doing networking, finding incubators and accelerators, all of that helps. And I loved that panel where they really talked about that you need support to succeed. So you were in the right place to learn today. And so I encourage you that this is your opportunity to learn, take notes, ask questions. We'll have Q&A at the end, because you're surrounded by people that really like working with founders. I was asked recently by a founder, so what is it that investors really want? She was very frustrated because she was preparing for a specific pitch event and asked 5 different investors about what was needed in her pitch. And she got how many answers? 5 different answers. 5 different answers. And she was like, what do I do? She was ready to just cancel her appearance at this pitch event. So I said, no, that's okay. So we had a little chat and talked about kind of, if you have these things, you'll be okay. So these are the things that no matter where you are in your fundraising stage, you need to have this in order to succeed in fundraising. You need to have a really clear pitch narrative. Like, this is what you say, what your story is. That has to make sense to investors. You need to have a pitch deck that's memorable, that they can look at and go, yeah, I get it. And you need to be able to pitch, like have those good presentation skills that people will listen to you, and you're engaging and you're connecting with investors. So all of that's really important, but we can't cover all of that in half an hour. So today I'm going to talk about the deck part, because this is what I find founders are most worried about starting off with. So let's talk about how to make a deck that investors actually find engaging. They want to know more. And how to craft that story based on what investors are really looking for. These are things they might not tell you. And we're going to talk about the mistakes that you can avoid, which will get you ahead of the vast majority of other pitches. I really love this topic because I've seen a lot of pitches as an angel investor and as a pitch coach, and I always see ways that things can improve. So I love helping founders improve. And so just a little bit about my background. I've been obsessed with communication skills most of my career. So when I listen to a pitch, I wear 2 hats. I'm an angel investor, so I'm analyzing the investability of that business, but I've done presentation skills training for over 2 decades. So I notice things that most people don't. And as that trainer of presentation skills, I mean, I've worked in Asia, in Europe, and here. So I've used to working with people from different cultures, a whole variety of industries. So I'm noticing things like how people are communicating when something really works well. Exactly did they do? I'm also noticing what they did when things do not work. And so that's why I started pitch training, because I want to help people succeed and improve. And sometimes it only needs a few tweaks to be 80% better. So this is your chance to learn. Please take notes. I'm going to cover some things that are not in your typical downloadable pitch template, and that if you searched on ChatGPT, it's not going to be that, because anybody can do that, right? So I thought, I'm not just going to go through your pitch outline. I'm going to talk about things that are a little bit deeper in the investor perspective of what investors really want to know and understand from your first pitch. So I'm going to talk about how to structure that pitch so that investors stay engaged. And I know it's easier said than done, because this is a very, it's not intuitive if you haven't been an investor before. So the short answer for you is that you structure your pitch deck in the way that investors think. Okay, so easy, right? The key mindset here is that you want it to be about them. Your pitch is not about you. Your pitch is about them. So let's get in the head of your ideal investor. We want to transform your vision into a pitch that investors get. So here's how to do that. The very first thing is mindset. If you are in the mindset of being investor focused, then it will be easier for you to create the content. So the investor focus means that everything you're doing and creating is for the benefit of investors. You're only trying to find what's meaningful to them. And the benefit of being investor focused is it will be easier to then pitch according to how investors think. Why is this important? Investors see a lot of decks. They see a lot of pitches. So you want to be remembered. You need to stand out. And to do that, you need to get their attention, keep their attention, and make them curious. And this is not easy. This takes some skill and practice. Because if you lose their attention, it's unlikely that you'll get a call back. You've wasted that opportunity. So the way to pitch to keep their attention is to pitch according to how they think. And the key is to give them the information that they want. So let's really get in their head. When you're pitching, or when an investor is looking at your deck, they are asking themselves, could this be a wildly successful business? Okay, so that seems obvious, right? But when founders are pitching, they often do not show how their business could be wildly successful. I'm going to give you an example of this. I was a pitch judge at a very large event and saw over 20 pitches in one afternoon. I would not recommend it. It was really tiring. And to do that, the judges were given very set criteria, right? Because they go by in a blur, right? You're judging on these. This is your rubric, these 5 things. I think it was team, problem, market, business model, and technology. It was a techie event. Okay, so we are told this is what we're judging on. The founders are told at the very beginning, even before they were invited, or when they were first invited, and again, it was reiterated. You are judged on these criteria. This is your rubric. Got it. What do you think founders talked about? Product. Some of them only talked about product. And this is going by in a blur, right? So we listen to the pitch and we key in, okay, technology sounds interesting, give that a 4. Team wasn't covered. Business model wasn't covered. Market opportunity wasn't covered, right? So some people scored really low. They had an amazing product. We don't know what their market was. We don't know what their business model is. So this happens all the time. It's a common mistake, and I'll tell you why. No judgment here if you've done this, because most founders do this. Most founders talk more about their product than about their business. And this is human nature, right? We love to talk about what we're working on, what we're excited about. And you're talking about product all the time. You're developing product, you're selling product, you're onboarding team members and working on product. But investors are looking at, is this going to be a wildly successful business? They want to know the business potential. They really don't care about your product features. I'm so sorry. I know they're exciting, but that's not the thing that's going to keep their attention. It's such a common mistake. I've given it a name. I call it a product-focused pitch. So if your pitch is mostly about product and it's got this great demo on all of your features, and that's mainly what you're talking about, you risk losing their interest because they'll get bored. And the reason they get bored when the pitch is about product features is because they're not your customer. They're not going to buy your product. They want to buy into your business if it could be wildly successful. So you need to kind of rein that in. I know you're excited about this, but you need to rein in your excitement about product features and go, okay, that is not what they want to hear. So let's talk about what they do want to know. Okay, quick thing. These are the most common mistakes in a teaser deck. I'm going to talk about teaser decks today. And the reason is that, I only have half an hour. And so instead of covering all the aspects of a pitch, I'm going to cover your teaser deck so that we can focus and you can learn something very specific. The teaser deck is different from your pitching deck, but don't worry, they follow the same general structure. And you're going to need to create a teaser deck first, so we'll start there. Okay, teaser deck. Okay, these are the most common mistakes in any deck. First one is TMI, too much information. It's very tempting to cram a lot of information into a deck because what if investors want to know it? But it makes it too confusing. And the second one is that the content is not focused on what investors want, AKA it's just too product focused. And the third one is that it's not engaging. If people spend all their time focusing on creating a deck and they don't practice, their pitching skills are probably a bit flat. So we'll dive in how to fix the middle two, particularly the middle one. Okay, pitch deck, teaser deck, I'm ahead. What do you think is the purpose of a teaser deck? Pique interest, exactly. So we want to make them curious and get a meeting. So you give them just enough information to create curiosity and to pique their interest. It's kind of like a resume, right? If you've ever looked for a job, you send a resume, usually a one-pager, to get an interview. It doesn't have your whole life history. It just is down to like the bit that they would be interested in knowing. And then when you get that interview, you don't necessarily rely on your resume. This is your chance to shine. So a teaser deck's like that. It might get you a meeting, but it's not going to get you funding. So, but it's really helpful because a good teaser deck will help visualize your pitch story. So here's some guidelines on a teaser deck. First of all, they're usually between 10 to 16 slides. There's no appendix slides in a teaser deck. You save those for a meeting. A teaser deck is shareable because investors might share it with a different investor to gauge interest. You have no control over who sees it after they share it. And so you should never put things in your teaser deck that are a secret. You don't know if you don't put anything in there that you wouldn't want a competitor to see. So other guidelines on a teaser deck, you want it to be really easy to read. And here's why. Fun fact, in my non-scientific survey of investors that I meet all the time, I have learned that investors spend, on average, 2 minutes looking at a teaser deck to decide if they want to meet or not. So if your teaser deck is densely written with paragraphs, they probably won't get past the first 2 slides. They'll read for a few minutes and then give up. So the key here is that you want your teaser deck skimmable. They can look through your slides, skim it, and in 2 minutes go, I get it. I want to have a meeting, or I get it, not a fit, but I know who might be. So this is challenging. That means if it's skimmable, each slide has to have a really concise message that captures the essence of that topic. And that they can glance at that, read it in 10 or 20 seconds, and go to the next one. So it's very precise, very clear in your messaging, and that takes some preparation. But a teaser deck also needs complete thoughts because you're not there to explain it. So this is where you have 1 or 2 phrases or sentences that capture the message, some visual or bullet points to support it, and that's really all that you have room for because they're only going to glance at it for 30 seconds tops, between 10 and 30 seconds. Okay, so how do we create a teaser deck that's skimmable? That's what we're going to work on today. Raise your hand if you've ever downloaded a pitch template. Okay. All right, it's okay if you've downloaded a pitch template because it gives you reference of what needs to be in a pitch deck. But please don't ever download a template and start filling it in. That is the worst way to create your deck. And I'll tell you why. Now you're going, oh, sorry about that. But here's why. There's nothing that will stifle your train of thought and your creativity more than filling in a slide. Okay, have you ever had, I've had this experience. I'm gonna edit my slides, I open it up, and I have to rearrange the text box, change the background color. Oh, that font's too small, fix the font. What was I going to say? I cannot remember what I was gonna write because I've been fixing my friggin' fonts. So you just can't be creative and have flow when you're stuck in a deck, unless you're like a graphic designer and you love that, and that is not me. You are creating content that's meaningful to investors, so do that when you're not in slide prep mode, please. And also it's because every founder's different, every company's different, every story's unique. So your deck should follow this path and story that works for you, and the way that tells your story in the most compelling way. And if everybody's filling in templates, then they all look the same. And if they all look the same, you don't stand out. I want you guys to stand out. I want your deck to be memorable. So just use those templates for reference. We want you to be remembered and not like everybody else. Instead, brainstorm first on these really important key themes that will help you to focus on the things that you need to cover in your teaser deck. And then you get these down, and then you can start on slides. Well, not quite yet. First of all, okay, you are not going to be surprised at this, but I'll explain them, and hopefully it'll make more sense. These are the key themes that investors want to see before you talk about product features. Before you do that product demo, they want to understand that you are solving a really hard problem. Okay, now that sounds obvious. Like, yeah, thanks, Dana. Everybody starts with a problem slide. But the problem is, most problem statements lack urgency. You need to demonstrate to investors that your customers have a pain point that they will pay to solve. And 90% of the teaser decks I see do not do that very well. Next is solution. They want to see that you have a solution and that it's unique and it solves the problem that you've now made really clear. And then there's the market opportunity. Investors want to see that there's an opportunity in this market, given the potential size and current trends. Investors are really looking for potential here, so you need to make sure that it shows. I'll come back to this one later. Team. They want to see that you are the right team to grow this business. Again, you thinking that's obvious? I'll come back to that. And traction. Traction, the purpose of traction is to show that you have market validation. Investors are looking to see that there actually really is a market for this cool product. So it's important that you show some kind of market validation. Okay, so if these are the key themes that you need to make clear before you talk about product features, how can we make these impactful? So I'll dig in a little bit on each of these. So the first one is problem solution. Sometimes companies are solving more than one problem, or the problem is kind of complicated. But you really need to, and if you're talking to investors and they are confused about what problem you solve, or they just seem kind of like, yeah, this doesn't seem that urgent, then you need to redo your problem statement. If it's getting too complicated, one way to do it is to try a story. If you can tell a story of your customer journey from pain point to solution, to that outcome with your solution, then that adds a lot of clarity to what it is that you're doing and why it's important. I'll give you an example. A couple years ago, I saw a pitch, and I see a lot of these actually, that start off saying, the problem is climate change. And I'm a climate tech investor, so I see these a lot. The problem is climate change. But then they get to the solution, and the solution is not solving climate change. Climate change is part of the trend in the market opportunity that makes this problem worse, but it doesn't tell us what problem they solve. So I saw one like this, and I gave him some feedback and discussed a few ideas. We talked for 10 minutes. And then I saw him pitch at an event a week later, and it was totally different and totally clear, where it was, meet Maria, a farmer in Eastern Washington, who loses 25% of her crop from farm to customer. This is a huge loss in revenue. Our solution reduces crop wastage by 50%. Boom, that's clear. And it's so memorable, I remember it years later. So this is the kind of thing you have to be specific. If a story helps tell, if you can describe a customer in their pain and then in your solution, that makes it clear. Okay, the other one that really, really needs some help is market opportunity. Market opportunity is usually, in a pitch, is usually a missed opportunity for you to get investors excited. And the reason is that market opportunity is way more than TAM. There's nothing that will make investors' eyes roll more than a huge TAM with no clarity on who the market is. It's like, okay, another $2 billion market or $1 trillion market. Yeah, really? That number's meaningless unless you tell us more. So I want you to think of it this way. Let's say you and I are chatting over coffee, and I ask you, so why does this market have potential? You're the expert in this industry. What trends do you notice that make this the time to invest in this market? What would you say if I asked you that? That's a really good place to start in your brainstorming on how can I describe this market opportunity. And tell us about who's that beachhead market. One of the people on our panel talked about your beachhead market. Who's your initial customer? And tell us about that market. How big is that? Who is it? What are they doing? Okay, so for those of you who are pitching later today, I'm going to warn you what is my biggest annoyance when I look at a pitch deck. And this is when their SOM is a percentage of TAM, where they say, oh, if we could get 10% of this market, we will make this much money. Well, that's just a wild-ass guess. I'm sorry. Why not 20%? Maybe 5. Maybe you'll only get 1. Like, who is that? I would rather you describe your SOM, or at least your beachhead market, very precisely with who it is, how many are there. So, maybe you'll say, with this product, we can serve 5,000 customers in North America that fit this profile, and they'll each pay $5,000 a year, and that's a $25 million SOM. Okay, that's precise. We know who it is. That shows that you've actually done your research, and you haven't just asked ChatGPT, how big is this market? And I'll get 10% of that. So show us you know your customer in market opportunity. And then people can glance at that and go, okay, interesting SOM. They know who their target is. All right, I got that off my chest. Thank you. All right, team. Team is important because we want to know why you are the best founder or team to grow this business. So this should be way more than just photos and title and your last job. Tell us why you. I was talking with a client a couple weeks ago, and he said, people, when I meet with an investor, they're very impressed with my expertise and my experience, but they're surprised. I was like, well, then we need to make that more clear in your teaser deck. So we did some brainstorming, and we added a line at the top and a line under his picture and clarified his co-founder, and that made all the difference. People can glance at it when he's not there and go, oh, wow, these guys know this industry. They are the experts. So think about why you. That slide should answer that question. It will take a while to explain that in 1 or 2 sentences, but it's worth the time. Okay, next one, traction. So investors are really looking here that there's validation, that there's a market for this business. And if you're pre-revenue, you still need to show that you have market validation. It might be that you've done 30 discovery calls, and now you have 3 letters of intent. Maybe you have pilots. Maybe you've done this market research and you know exactly who you're targeting. But you've somewhere in there, you need to find show traction or show market validation. It also helps to show that you know your customer. So maybe you can put it in your go-to-market, that in our 30 discovery calls, this is the market we're going to target first using this channel, whatever that is, okay? Okay, and so how do you craft a pitch story that incorporates all of this without being tempted to just explain your product? So I'm going to take you on these steps that I take with my clients. And here's the first thing you need to realize is that, did you know that planning your entire pitch message first, before you start on slides, will save you hours and hours of editing time later? It's true. So it's important to plan the pitch message first. This will save time, it will save editing later, you'll be able to think more clearly, it will make more sense to you, and you'll be able to practice it without getting bogged down with slides that aren't working. So the key to planning first, do I have that on there? Let's come to that in a sec, is to brainstorm. come up with a really concise message for each section of your pitch. Okay, you got that pinch template you've downloaded. Change that into, put it on a whiteboard or paper and just have sections across your table or your wall on creating with those headings that you need to work on. But brainstorm and plan, what would my ideal investor want to know about this? And play with that. So here's a tip. I think I like to brainstorm the whole pitch. So you can use a whiteboard, you can use paper. I really like Post-it notes because you can rearrange them. In fact, when I create a new module for my training, I use Post-it notes on poster board and rearrange and edit and take out and add until I can look at the whole thing and go, this makes sense. This will work. So try that. Try storyboarding. Or otherwise, if you think linear, write it down on paper. But plan that first so that you can practice it out loud and visualize the whole thing at once, not in a dozen choppy slides. And when you think you got, okay, this is the great narrative, I'm going to say it out loud, I can explain it concisely in 10 minutes or less, I think this explains my business in a compelling way. Then you plan the editorial copy for your slides. Before you start designing, before you open slides, you plan out the editorial copy. So it can be in an outline, it can be in a storyboard, whatever works best for you. I've worked with some designers to help my clients for finishing off their pitch. And what they do at the end, you talk about what you want in it, they actually send a blank slide, or it's a deck with nothing but words, saying, here's the words I'm going to put. Is this what you want? And it'll have the headings, the phrases, these are the words that are going to be in it. There's no design. They want to make sure they know what's going in it before they design it. So knowing that, I worked with a client just a few weeks ago. It's like, okay, this is what they do. Save time, save money. We created a Word document with the narrative, the editorial copy of every slide. And then he found somebody in India to do it for $400 these are the words, now to make it look nice. And it turned out pretty good. So, saving time by doing this, you can then delegate if you don't want to do slides, or when you do create them, it'll be easy because you're not trying to figure out what was I going to say now that I've fixed my background color. So that's the steps. Brainstorm, plan, and then create the editorial copy. Then you can turn on some slides, whichever program you like to use, and make it look nice. But keep in mind when you're creating slides is to keep them simple. You just need to focus on what investors want to know and to know enough to be curious and spark interest at this stage. Okay, so now you're ready to start off your deck. Let's get in the head a little bit of investors to think about, what do they look for in a deck? So at a high level, investors want to understand what you do and are you a fit for them? So please make it easy. Make it really easy on that first slide. What do you do? Really clear and concise. I want you to think of it like you and I are chatting over coffee and I know nothing about your industry and I say, what do you do? How would you explain that in 1 or 2 sentences in a way that somebody not in your industry will go, oh, I get it. Okay, this might take a little time to get it narrowed down, but it's really important because if you have a paragraph there and you over-explain, people won't read it. But if you don't put it on there, I've heard investors complain, I've just read through a 20-slide deck and I have no idea what this company does. So don't do that. Make it easy. Because most people will not read through 20 pages and then go back and go, all right, let me figure this out. You just don't. All right, easy to understand, no jargon. And okay, now let's compare that to a pitching deck. You've got your teaser deck, you get a meeting, now you're going to pitch. A pitching deck can be fewer words on a slide because you're there to explain. And when you're pitching, the focus should be on you. This is your chance to shine, to build relationships, to show that you are competent and committed to this business, and you're passionate about making it work and serving your customers. This has to show up, and that doesn't work if you're just reading slides, so you really need to practice that. And you can have appendix slides in your pitching deck, which you will save for Q&A. Okay, so when you're pitching, these are the things you absolutely need. You need to have a clear pitch narrative. This is separate from what's on the slide. You might have to have notes, or you'll have practiced it separately so you know what to say for each slide. Then you have to have a great pitching deck that does not confuse, it supports what you're saying. Engaging delivery, because you want to connect with investors. You want them to remember you as this amazing, outstanding founder I want to meet. And you need to be prepared for Q&A. Part of that preparation is Q&A. Okay, so that's what you need to do. A great teaser deck will get you that meeting sometimes if it's your fit. But then there's a lot more you need to get to the second meeting. And we'll have to save that for another day because Ron's going to start waving at me and say it's time's up. So I'll just end there with, I have a handout. You are welcome to download it here. This is on those key themes that you need to have clear in your deck. I'm happy to answer some questions. Yes. Well, those are the typical order, but it depends a lot on what you do. So I give those key themes, but then sometimes, usually it's intro, problem, solution, market. Sometimes it's product earlier. Sometimes it's team earlier. If this is a stellar team that's, third-time founder and everybody who knows them would throw money at them to be part of whatever it is, then you put them first. Right? So you have to think about what your ideal investor wants to know first. Yes. Well, when you're creating a deck to pitch or a teaser deck, don't make stuff up. So if you go out too far, you're making things up, right? You're just guessing. We think that, and Ron has a comment on that. Yes, yes. It's it for financials. Like if the money might take you for 2 years and it's going to help you reach your beachhead market and take you to monthly recurring revenue of this amount. That's really helpful. Financials, they want to show 3 or 4 years out, but even then, you don't need to go past that unless you're like seed or Series A, where you do have that path to 5-6 years of financials. But at the moment, we just want to know what you know now. If you've got channel partners lined up for your go-to-market and you've got 3, and you think, well, in 5 years, we're going to add these other 2, we don't need to know that yet. Don't confuse things. Okay, another question? Yes. Well, sometimes there's options for other beachhead markets, but we also don't want to confuse investors with these are our 4 beachhead markets because nobody can target effectively 4 beachhead markets. So you really focus on the one that you think. And if you have the staying power to test those markets until you have market validation with these are my early adopters because they have a bigger pain point or they're more likely to try new things, then it's good to learn that first, so that because investors will ask that. Yeah, and that's the sort of thing that you learn in, you know, in the incubator. Yes.
If I may suggest, we have the food truck out front here for the next hour, and if you're willing, while some people are standing in line, to keep going with Q&A.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that all
fine.
right?
Yeah, before we break up, follow me on LinkedIn. Join my mailing list. If you sign up for the handout, you'll be on it. You can. I only send like 2 or 3 emails a month because I only send something that I'm like, oh, this is important. And there's some other events coming up. I'm running a pitch clinic here on September 18th about building a deck together. So those steps I talked about that I do with my clients, this is where we dig in and spend a couple of hours building the deck from the ground up. So you are welcome to sign up for that. It's on the Venture Mechanics website.
I was going to do that.
Yeah. And
today was the infomercial.
this was the infomercial. This was the preview for the clinic that's on the 18th. I'm also doing a webinar on September 19th called Beyond the Slides, where you're keeping investors engaged because you have great presentation skills. Different topic, but just as important. And I highly recommend you practice however you do it. This is my favorite app for practicing. All of my clients use this. I have the enterprise version, which I pay for, but if you want to practice, try Udly, download it, practice. It's a freemium. You can practice so many times a month for free. If you decide this is so good, I'm going to pay for it, there's a code for discount. Okay, now you can do your
Super. Okay,
infomercial.
so just a few logistical notes here. We are going to restart at exactly 1 o'clock. We've got 8 companies doing the raw concept pitch. It's super important for us here at Venture Mechanics to create as many opportunities for entrepreneurs to get up and practice in many different time formats, because when you're invited to go speak at E8, how many minutes?
10 minutes.
10 minutes, which is the same at Alliance of Angels, but I've seen them be anywhere from 5 to 12 typically. This is the raw concept pitch portion at 1 o'clock, so these are 3 minutes or 2 minutes of Q&A. Later on at 3:30 this afternoon, we're going to do the venture pitch competition, where it's 5 minutes of Q&A, and we're going to dig deeper into their business models, because these are companies that are probably currently raising money. So just a note on lunch, please support this guy over here. It's really hard to get food trucks to come for a small event like this, so we really appreciate it, because we have to guarantee if they don't make enough money. And it's good food. We set up some tables in the Boeing room way up front over there, but also feel free to go into conference rooms and hang out, have little cliques of friends. I'm sorry, I meant networking, conversation between founders.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And I think that's it. If you could just promptly be back in your seats by 1 o'clock, that pitch competition is going to be run like that, right? So don't miss anything. And you're welcome to stay here as long as Dana is willing, and keep asking questions.
Sure. Take
advantage of it. All right. And thank you. Round of applause.
My pleasure.
Please.
Thank you. And it would be great if some of you join the pitch clinic, because it'll be really fun. It's the way to make creating a pitch deck is freaking hard, and I make it fun. And we have lots of brainstorming together. Yes. Well, there's probably a couple reasons for that. One is it depends on who the judges are. Investors are all very different. They invest in different kinds of industries and different kinds of founders. They have different opinions. Somebody that wins at a pitch competition isn't always then going to connect with their with their ideal investor at that event. They might win because they have a great idea or they're really good at presenting. But the key thing to raise money is to connect with the ideal investor for you, which is why it's important to have that very clear and ideal investor profile before you start pitching. Knowing, a pitch event is fun, it's good practice, probably won't get you money. Also, it's just that investors are so different. Somebody could be at a panel and go, oh, I really like this guy, or maybe they're not even investors on the panel. Maybe they're just judging based on certain criteria, and they tick all the boxes, but that's not necessarily who that investor would invest in if it were their own money. So they're not real because in the sense that the investors aren't saying, I'm going to put money in. They're saying, oh, you filled out the rubric. That was a good pitch. You win. It's more judging your pitch than would I invest. So, any other questions? Yes. That would be the pitching deck, because this is where you really need to shine. They don't know anything about it. They're going to be listening to you. And practice as if you don't have a deck. Kind of like you can go to a job interview and somebody will say, well, HR set up this meeting. I'm the manager. I haven't had time to look at your resume. Tell me about yourself. What are you going to say? You're not going to go, read my resume. You're going to say, great, it's a fresh slate. So use your pitching deck and be prepared to communicate well. Yep. Anybody else? Yes. Okay, then you're not at pitching stage. You're at discovery call stage, in which case, go and talk to as many potential customers as you can until you can clarify a pain point, and then what solution, and then go back to them and say, would this solution fit what you're looking for? Would this solve your problem? Would you pay for it? You might get that. That's where you're going to get that validation. I wouldn't try to pitch to any investors until you have market validation, because they'll all tell you you're too early, and then you've put your effort into the wrong thing, I think. Yeah. Anybody else? Super. I'll be